had some
No.
networking there.
No worries. So I think we're at a couple minutes past here, and I think we've got I think we have quorum. So let's start with the boilerplate. Hello everyone. Welcome to the which meeting is this? This is the TAG mentoring working group with the CNCF. Boy, this is a rough start. Thanks everyone for coming. It is an official CNCF meeting, which means it is covered by the contributor. Oh my goodness, my brain is just forgetting all of the words.
Code of conduct.
Code of conduct. Yes. Thank you so very much.
Code of conduct.
which is like Jade has just demonstrated to be kind and helpful to each other. And lastly, this is being recorded, so this entire intro will be put up on YouTube in all of its glory for posterity. So keep that in mind. If you want to keep your video off, that's fine. I'll try and pay attention to the chat as things pop up. So speaking of the chat, I'm just going to drop the our meeting minutes in again. And we actually have a bit of an agenda today, which is lovely. So just a couple of updates to begin. Our KubeCon maintainers track talk is in process. I believe Jay is working on his video portion. I've still got to take the notes that we took last time and put them into a Google slides presentation, but that should be fairly straightforward to do. Those are due, I believe, October 14th on Friday. We need to upload the slides. Now, for your video, Jay, I think we've got a little bit of leeway because I'll be able to take that with me and say, okay, this is a part of the, I'd eventually like to get it uploaded to Sched, but I don't think it needs to be uploaded sort of prior to the lecture or the talk, because it is part of the talk, right? So I don't think we need to hit that for October 14th. So you can that's okay if it's not there. Quick update on the CNCF mentorship term 3, September through November. The midterm just hit last week, I believe on the 6th was when the evals were due. And since Friday, I've been working with the Linux Foundation and the mentees to get stipends out and whatnot. We've got probably about 10 of the 24 at least the stipend process started. For just one note, we did have one withdrawal. The mentee was the mentee and the mentors agreed that the work was not sufficient, and so they mutually agreed to end a bit early, which is a shame, but it is, I suppose it is what it is, but at least it was a mutual understanding. It wasn't a surprise to anybody. Regarding Google Summer of Code, the majority of our work is done there, but we do have 2 projects that have taken advantage of the extension feature that Google has implemented for this term. And so we've got one finishing up on October 17th. The mentee has submitted their stuff, and I've reminded the mentor that they have a review to provide by the 17th, so they're aware of that. And then the other one is finished up on the 14th, so I'll send out a reminder probably early November. And that's, I think, my update. So now we're into stuff that other folks have put down. So would anybody else like to speak to the last 2 points there on our reminders set?
No, that's already good to know in general. I mean, that engagement stuff looks great so far, apart from obviously the one withdrawal there, which is a bit disappointing, but overall that's yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I think we're starting to get, and I kind of hate to, but I'm seeing a pattern of at least one either withdrawal or fail per sort of cycle. It seems like one or two. I do prefer this withdrawal format because it's again, it's not a surprise to anybody. I do follow up with the mentor and the mentee saying, hey, is there anything that we could have done differently to help support this? But generally speaking, in this case, I don't want to say names or tell stories out of school, as it were. It was one of the mentee appeared to be employed elsewhere, and so had no time to focus on the mentorship. And so I think one of the things we should do moving forward is highlight that, because this is not the first time that I've seen a mentee basically say, well, I've got 2 jobs, so how could I spend any time on this? And I'm like, well, this is supposed to be a full-time this is supposed to be a full-time program. So I think we should surface that and make sure that it is more obvious than it currently is. But I think that may just go back to some of the work that we're doing on considering changes to the repo and the site and whatnot anyway. So maybe a note that, hey, full-time folks.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that was something that was flagged at the for the mentor feedback at the end of the last intake as well. So it's obviously been something that's been there for a while and still seems to be ongoing. So yeah, no, that's cool. That makes sense. Oh yeah, did anyone else have anything else to add to any mates?
Not from my side here. I'm curious. I'm curious about New Zealand progress and the general notes that we've got. Oh, did you have your chat with Kunal? I'll let you. Yes. I'll let you tell your story.
Yeah, I thought just on the back of everything you just sort of mentioned, might be good to speak to a little bit. So yeah, Kunal and I managed to catch up last night, the first time, which is great. Yeah, it was just obviously to touch a little bit on cloud native students in response to Natalie's suggestion, one of our previous meetings, which was yeah, I think really good to raise. So I kept it pretty general for me. It's yeah, it's a new area to me. So I was just trying to listen and get a little bit more understanding in terms of what that all looks like. So for anyone who's not unfamiliar, I think there's just under 4,000 members as part of the community that Kunal put together. And essentially about raising awareness and trying to increase contributor growth. A lot of them are, past mentees and, mentors in progress. So there's a good mix of people. And different people's different sort of experience, and they obviously focus on different sort of topics and things like that. So in relation to the mentorship stuff, it was a little bit about getting his experience, because he's been both a mentee and a mentor himself, and a little bit of some of his insights that in terms of considerations that we might take in terms of improving the overall quality of our programs and a lot of the work we're trying to do. So one of the foremost things that he said, when we discussed some of the challenges that we've sort of identified already and Kerry's areas of focus, and in response to what you just sort of said around, that identifying those withdrawals and hopefully mitigating that, was he really tried to emphasize strongly that, getting people contributing earlier than later, like, whether it be, even several months out ahead of, starting the mentorship programs was pretty critical in his experience, because there has been that sort of trend, not huge, but there has been a pattern of people who just go through it for for that 12-week duration or whatever, collect their stipend, punch the ticket and disappear again. And obviously, if we're trying to create a thriving sort of community over time, I guess the better that we can front foot people in terms of the value and the significance of contribution in general, is going to be more likely to for them to be able to sort of remain afterwards, and hopefully, like I said, if we try and encourage them back into become mentors and keep sort of building their levels of experience and responsibility over time as maintainers and the like. He felt that was really key to get across. So they're in the process of forming a bit more structure around that community in general. He's been liaising with the likes of Priyanka and that to sort of go through those sorts of steps. So they're in a little bit of transitional sort of phase at the moment, but he's keen to connect with obviously yourself, Nate, and the rest of the group at any time to sort of look at how we can better sort of coordinate things overall to support in that space. So that was really encouraging. So yeah, lots of learning, and I guess in which sort of so first of all, was there any comments or thoughts on any of that?
Sounds like it was a very good talk. I'm looking forward to working with them in that program. I'm curious where that program has fit historically. Has that been a part of the ambassadors program, or is that separate from that you're aware of, or that he's aware of?
Yeah, I wasn't too clear on that. I asked, but I think they were sort of, yeah.
Okay, well, that's fine. It's okay for it to remain unclear at this point, I think.
Yeah. So it was, there's still a lot there to unpack. I just took a bunch of rough notes. I still need to sort of review and everything myself, so I'll share those out as well. But also I guess there's another sort of point that got down there around pathway mapping, and obviously Rian's been doing some really good groundwork in terms of trying to bit of identify what is the general sort of progression for those who participate in the programs, sort of opportunities that move on to. Again, Kunal sort of spoke to this as well, that obviously the participation in things like LFX has had a really high I don't know if success rate is the right sort of word, but the ratio of people sort of who complete that program then move on to bigger career opportunities and things as well. So I think in general, but definitely for prospective students and mentees here in New Zealand, it'll be really good to start building some life cycles and pathways and things like that to show what that journey looks like. And so that one of the other things that will be on the cards will be to connect with some of the students who might want to volunteer some of their stories and testimonials and share what their moves have been through to going on to different projects and companies and things like that post program. So that'll be good too. So Rian and I were catching up later this week to look into that space a little bit more and revisit some of the groundwork that he's already started on. And that will also be sort of coinciding with, I haven't had, unfortunately, I apologize, much time to go into start into the mentoring repos and start cleaning that up, so we can start identifying perhaps what sort of stuff we want to move to the website. That's obviously still on the radar as well. So there's a few things to unpack and go through, but a little bit more clarity about how to go about doing that now, so that should be good. So I'm just going to mute. Sorry, I live next to trains.
Oh, nice.
I'm not sure if you can hear that at all, but
so I've just in terms,
we are into training over here.
Sorry, go ahead.
I said we are into training here, so very appropriate. Jane and I had a bit of a discussion yesterday about I think he shared with you the sheet of where I followed up on the GitHub and LinkedIn information of some of the mentees to see what they've done. So we'll flush out what value is in that and what we want to see. Do we want to see that they jump in career? How much time has elapsed since then? What in progress? So just kind of what And I think what Jay was also pointing to, it would be good to point towards success stories, say, these people started here and 3 years down the line, this is where you can go, because it's hard to see what happens after mentorship. And if you can see what he rightly said is we are basically digging into people's personal information. So we might want to reach out to a few good success stories and say, would you mind if we make you the poster child of showing other people they can be as great as you, something like that.
Yeah, there's definitely some PII stuff that we need to be cognizant about as we're sort of going through this before we do any sort of public-facing publishing. I don't actually think I've seen that link yet, and that's fine. I don't think even that research should be dropped into this. I don't think that should be dropped into the meeting minutes even just yet, just in case.
No, not at all. And even the most of the research that I've done is really public. It's their GitHub information, the linked information, but to go and point to the specific person without acknowledging them beforehand would be just rude. Yeah,
I agree. Yeah. That sounds amazing. That sounds like you've done quite a bit of work to hunt down some of these connections. And thank you for doing that. One of the I can't remember the name of the project now, but there's a project out there that does maybe Alexander, you remember this one. It's almost an academic tool where it helps sort of map out the health of any given project, and it sort of says, okay, so it does a lot of the dev stats and whatnot that, and it might be useful for doing some of this type of work. I'll make a note to myself to try and, when I was at Open Source Summit, one of the maintainers was doing a talk. I'll make sure that I try and find that talk so that I can find the project name and pass that along. That might be a value.
Yeah, if I find them, I'll link it too. Was it one of the ones I mentioned?
No, I just of the four of us, you were the most likely to.
Yeah, I can try and find it.
I don't. If you don't remember it off the top of your head, don't worry about it. I'll like I said, I can look through the speakers and be like, okay, it's that project. My mind is blanking on it right this moment, which is fine. And it's not mapping academic progression; it's helping map project health, but it is from an academic standpoint. So folks will use it to as research that they can then write papers on and such like that. So
I can remember that is the chaos community. There's the Orbit Love. There's the
chaos sounds right, actually. It's like chaos with like 2 S's.
Yeah.
That's I think that's yeah, that's the one. Actually, yeah, you're absolutely right. Thank you.
Yep.
You see, I know who to call.
Nice.
I don't necessarily have it all up in my head, but I know where to find it. Yeah.
That's what the expanded memory looks like.
Sorry, say again.
That's what expanded memory looks like.
Right, yeah.
You just dig into your resources and there's the memory.
Yeah. Go. Yeah. So that's something that we can use to try and help understand what's going on in some of these projects and see who's been contributing, when they started contributing, if they've continued contributing after menteeship. Our terminology is tough to say sometimes.
I guess one of the points there or questions would be what are we currently using for the system wise to do any kind of storage or whatever of the data? Is that on the LFX, or what system are we using, or if any? How are we keeping track of like those programs? Are we using just GitHub, or do we have other platforms that we use?
Again, keeping in mind that we have PII sort of concerned around stuff like this, we are using a series of spreadsheets in the Linux Foundation's G Suite is where the lion's share of the mentee and mentor sort of information resides, including stuff like stipends, who's been paid, and things like that. So that's unfortunately that is actually one of the pieces that the CNCF and the Linux Foundation is keeping within my personal purview, because payments and such is a little bit sensitive. So we're keeping that responsibility with me and the CNCF. But for folks who are doing some of the research and who are essentially a part of the CNCF team, which extends into II, there is some sharing of that information to do this, to help with this research, but folks have been sort of asked kindly to keep in mind that this is not information to be distributed further than the G Suite. So that's sort of where that lives right now. The part that lives on GitHub is essentially any of the proposals, and that's sort of where we recruit projects to make proposals to do to feed the LFX site itself, right? Because the LFX mentorship site is where the actual sort of applications and such happen, but that's built out from the information that is provided by the projects on GitHub. And that actually reminds me, a lot of the organization happens on GitHub. And by that, I mean, for instance, I've made a note, I need to plan next year, we need to plan next year's term 1. And I want to do that before KubeCon, because part of the KubeCon maintainers track talk that we're doing is going to have a call to action where I would like to ask mentors or maintainers to go to next semester's repo and start making suggestions on projects. And so that process all lives in GitHub, and we're trying to keep as much of it open as we can. And because this is open information, for instance, like the folks who have applied and the folks who have been accepted, they are publicly sort of, that's public record on LFX. So we don't have to be too careful, but in terms of some of the payment stuff, that's why we need to keep some of that stuff internal. Does that answer your question, Jenny?
Yeah. I guess we have some of that information in GitHub, I guess, on the mentoring repository. Do you have any?
We also, sorry.
Do you have any updates of handles, like people's GitHub handles or any type of information there, or is it because from what I remember, we have the projects there, we have the who's the person the point of contact for the program, but do you have any information that's public on GitHub about like GitHub handles, Twitter handles, whatever?
No, and that's one of the spots that I think we fall down even on the LFX mentorship site side, because again, what happens is the mentors open up a PR and say, I'd like to do this project with this information, and they provide their email, the mentor information, so their email, their GitHub handles and such like that. And then the process is at the beginning of the semester, or the beginning of after all that is due, we go to Linux Foundation mentorship site and we open up a bunch of projects with that information, right? We set who the mentors are and we open it for applications on such and such a date. And when we get applications, the applications is open for a week or 2 weeks, and then the mentors make their selection. And when the selection is made, then I find out that mentee's email address, and the profile doesn't actually have the LFX mentorship page profile for any of these individuals has their name and their email address, but it doesn't necessarily have their GitHub handle. And so if I find that out, I do make myself a personal note, but because that's not a sort of a public connection, that's part of the private information that I tend to keep myself. Though I suppose we could open an issue with the LFX and say, hey, could we also add this? I don't know if they would be able to do that for us to add a mentee piece of info like that. I don't imagine it would be too onerous. The other thing we could do potentially is link back to like that, for instance, that blog post that I shared. At the end of it, we have a, oh, this one's actually an older one. We have a list of the project, the mentors, and the mentees, but there's no links anywhere, right? Which is not ideal. And so I was wondering if it might be worthwhile in the term folder for whatever project that we're running, if we have a project that has successfully brought a mentee on, that we then update that with who the mentee is and their information. Because you're right, like knowing the GitHub handle is one of the key ways that we can sort of monitor how things are going throughout the program. So that's an interesting point that potentially we should update our process and ask the not the problem, but one of the issues is it's always a request, right? We always have to then, like, if we want something updated, we have to ask somebody to do it because it's not necessarily information that I would have, or Jay or Rian, so we would always have to request that the mentors or the mentees update based on like a template or whatnot, and whether or not they do that is obviously up to them. So, but it might be a worthwhile ask.
Yeah,
Also,
that would be good, I guess. Go on, sorry.
Sorry, Alexander. Continue.
No, go on. I would just mention that would be good to have that.
Yeah, I also think it's not explicit that the project and the work being pushed by the mentee has to be in a specific public repo. And if we link up the repos and encourage the pushing of whatever work is being done in a known repo, so yeah, that will, as you say, then we can monitor.
Yeah, it's not an unknown repo, because the part of the information set that we get from the projects is an upstream issue, which points to which repo the work would be being done in. Right, you can make an educated guess on what a mentee's handle is, but some of these like, you won't necessarily see sort of daily or weekly PRs. I think probably you should, but you don't always. And so sometimes you get like a bigger PR like a month in rather than smaller PRs on a weekly basis, right? So it can be difficult to track down sometimes. But I think the more I'm sort of thinking about it, I think as a part of the process, we should ask for the project's page to get updated when folks bring their mentees on, just to highlight, hey, this is the mentee that we brought on, and so on and so forth, even though it's already over on the LFX site. Because there's no automated connection between the two, so we would always have to bring information back.
Yeah, one point I would make is that although we can start with GitHub or GitHub handles and whatnot, we got to think of other links and whatnot as well, because if we think about integrating other contributions and other programs from like the design space or marketing space, or that are not so focused on GitHub, then we gotta find a way of tracking that as well. So maybe we can start with GitHub. That's where almost everything is happening right now. But long term, thinking about other platforms and not to track like non-code programs and not. So
yeah,
just making a point so we can think about that on the long term.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that is, oh wait, actually, there's another note. I think we skipped community digital infrastructure for the New Zealand progress. Is that something you'd like to speak to, Jay, or you appear to be moving to your department, so.
Apologies, I had to relocate again. Trains are especially active now. It's one of those days. Sorry, guys. What did I miss?
So we just, I think the only thing that we haven't sort of touched on that is in our updates and reminders list is the community digital infrastructure point under New Zealand progress.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a brief update in terms of some of the stuff that's happening on my side at the moment. So where we sort of originally started was around trying to focus on raising awareness on the likes of Kubernetes and open source and LFX and stuff in general, in an attempt to sort of encourage people to take interest and ideally participate. And it's been a bit of a challenge as far as, with essentially people having no real frame of reference to try and build that, with any sort of significance. So it's still definitely on the radar, and there's still things that are being, some actions that have been taken to do that. But I guess I've sort of adjusted strategies a little bit and gone a little bit wider as far as introducing people to open source and cloud in general. And one part of that has been to work with the local community centers around creating some digital infrastructure. So just started to engage some of the local centers and council outside of the city, actually, in another district, about the prospect of perhaps doing that, setting up localized servers and ISPs to support existing sort of systems and software and things that they got going. They've got going, and where they've identified a lot of room for improvement. So there's been a pretty positive response to that already, and we'll keep building on that. We've got a few more meetings and presentations and things in the pipeline, which we're also looking to, or we've got some initial support from a national cloud provider who's quite interested in being part of that conversation as well. They're already doing something at the national government level, but very keen to sort of develop things on the community front there. So still early stages, but I guess the general sort of idea will be if people can start to see some tangible sort of value and application of these sorts of things where people are, and then I'll sort of make a little bit more, I guess, cognizant about what are the sorts of skills and things that we need to develop to be able to grow and maintain these sorts of things over time. And hopefully that will be a way of highlighting some of these sorts of development opportunities and likes of these projects under CNCF, etc., to be able to support that. So yeah, a little bit of a broader approach to it. Yeah, but I think, like I said, with the response so far, and there's a couple of you know, physical builds and things that are happening. Well, they're in development at the moment, where hopefully that digital side of things will be able to support directly the likes of a you know, couple of youth hub or series of youth hubs that they're looking to build in the city at the moment. And again, if we can get some of these sorts of things going in the community, then it's, you know, it sort of makes sense that they can hopefully coincide with some of those yeah, some of those physical builds and things too. So yeah, it's a little bit, as I said, wider approach, and that will probably inform things in terms of what a actual mentoring program will look like. But we're also yeah, working closer with one of the local tertiary or you know, sort of college providers who are really interested in building a formal curriculum around this. So again, if they can introduce students to some of that training, and then we can get some of the students involved in these sorts of projects, again, it'll sort of highlight the need for them to ensure that their skills and training, you know, are sort of in alignment with that too. So yeah, just a quick update. I'll probably cover that a little bit more in the presentation that I've got to flick through to you, but yeah, just to give a bit of heads up.
Is that where's the presentation that you're gonna give? Is it?
Oh, I haven't finished it. I haven't finished it yet. Yeah. It's the one I'll send through to Nate by the end of the week, and I've got to organize a video and everything for as well. But yeah, a lot of that stuff's still pretty fresh. Like I was only just able to meet with yeah, one of the community managers yesterday, who sort of spoke for some of the others in the group, and yeah, asserted that there'd be, you know, quite a bit of enthusiasm behind that, because it's,
That's
I guess, yeah, a lot of you know, the potential of you know, open source platforms and the ability to contribute in the way, you know, just the natural sort of makeup of it just makes a lot of sense. And it's not something you know, that they've explored, but a lot of the systems that they've been you know, stuck with by default essentially aren't meeting the needs, and unfortunately failing to provide the sort of, you know, support services that people need. So the idea, the whole sort of concept of this is just really appealing. So that's really cool. So
yeah, that's some exciting work. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're looking at ISP level contacts, type of.
Yeah. So Hippie's better to talk to all that sort of stuff in terms of exactly how it will look and work, but it's definitely stuff that he's mentioned over time. Yeah, so all this thing around like broad gateway protocols and everything is all sort of, you know, new language to me. But yeah, he's got some pretty clear ideas in terms of how it could all look and work. You know, I think from you know, real initial stages would be around just perhaps looking at, you know, building them off some existing sort of things that might be able to support them with sharing, you know, processes and documentation, working on that sort of stuff in the first instance. And over time, I see to be getting, you know, actual physical servers that they can, you know, develop and maintain, and yeah, set up ISPs, all that sort of thing. That's
maybe I take this offline, but I'm curious what the ISP landscape looks like in New Zealand. I know what it looks like in Canada generally, but we've got sort of 2 or 3 big players that are at the sort of the national or multi-province sort of level. From there all the way down to we have a series of islands here in British Columbia called the Gulf Islands, where we have an ISP that will like service an island. And so it'll be interesting to see what the variety of ISPs that you get to sort of work with on this is going to be like in New Zealand. I'm really curious.
Yeah, you and me both. As I said, it's a big learning curve for me, but yeah, there seems to be a few ideas around that sort of stuff, and even in the community, I'm starting to sort of come across a few people who have been, you know, looking at thinking about this space for a while, which is pretty cool, because it's yeah, like I said, it's been a bit of a challenge to find anyone who's sort of on that wavelength so far. So yeah, keen to see how it all plays out.
Yeah. Okay, so just looking at the time, we're at about 1:45. Is there, 1:45 my time? We're about quarter to the top of the hour, I suppose. We're all in different time zones. Is there anything that's not on the list that we feel like we should chat about before we close the session?
I would like to just get an update, something that we discussed on the last, I guess one of the last ones is around the Slack channel and getting the GitHub app disconnected from updates, or maybe changing to another channel.
I am happy to do that. Did we decide that that's actually, I don't know if we have a decision-making process. I would very much like
from what I remember, you just you or someone just had to take a look and see if we had some notes, like if there's any issues on creating another channel, and if necessary, creating another channel for mentoring bot or mentoring notifications. I guess that was the note about this. Just checking to see if you have any process to do that.
I am an admin in the CNCF Slack, so I can take a look. I haven't, but would be happy to do that. So let me make a note to do that, to at least find out what the process is. And I tend to agree. I think that we should remove it. I'm always hesitant to create new channels, especially a new channel that would only be servicing a bot. I think that if we want notifications from GitHub, we can go to GitHub and say,
just
hey,
get
give me a
in.
notification. I don't think that we need the duplicated.
Yeah,
the writer in me always says single source. So I'd be happy to just yank it if folks don't want it. The other thing I've been pushing for is whether or not we should even have, I mean, I suppose it's good to have the channel, but I really do want to push folks into the GitHub discussions and have open conversations, because Slack is not, you have to have a user, you have to sign in, the searchability isn't there. You can't search outside of Slack into Slack. And so I think that our main channel for discussion with folks outside of this working group should be the discussions board on GitHub. Now I've had some pushback and folks saying, hey, we should keep the mentoring channel open as it's a way of having folks connect with us. I think that it's a suboptimal solution. I think.
Yeah, I think having both is maybe a great thing, because if I guess Slack can be a more personal and like quick way of getting comments or feedback or anything, yeah. And then GitHub would be more for I guess we can get more participation having both, just because they have different different styles of communication. So one is rapid and quick, and the other one, like you said, someone, yeah, it's the same way for Slack. It's on GitHub. The difference is that, as I said, GitHub will have the searchability and the indexing, so that's great. So one of the things I thought when I was looking into the discussions and I thought about opening one there, is that I don't do we keep conversation regarding the working group, or more of the management side? Do you keep that on the mentoring repository or the contributor strategy? Just because looking to the that's what I thought.
For sure. I personally try to use the mentoring channel as little as possible, and my experience in that channel has been a lot of repeated questions. And this is part of the reason I'm so pro using something which is indexable, because if folks are asking the same question over and over again, then they're not finding the answer. And presumably they're looking. I would hope before asking. And so this is why I'm so sort of opposed to Slack, because it's opaque until you get into it, and then the first and then even when you're in it, the search is frankly poor. And so even if you search for the answer, you may not find it, given the way the search system works in Slack. So it's one of those things where I'd rather keep things in sort of one spot if it's possible. And I think that with GitHub, it's where all the work is sort of happening anyway. And so sort of pushing folks to that. And again, if we can bring folks into the mentorship program without having to have them sign up for yet another thing, which is what bringing people onto Slack would be, I would prefer to do that. So yeah, so for all of the organizational stuff, it's contributor strategy, and then for answering questions that happen to come up, it's in and even my stance on individual mentees asking me questions personally in Slack is generally to ask them to email me, right? Because I don't necessarily have all the answers for everything, right? So if somebody Slacks me a question about stipends that I don't have the answer to, I can't then bring in my accounting person in Slack, right? And still have all of the issue. So as soon as somebody asks me about an individual, like say, hey, I've got a stipend question, I immediately say, hey, can you email me this exact same question? Because then I can bring in the proper people, right? So and again, if somebody asks that question publicly, let's say it's a question not about a specific, like, oh, my individual bank is not working with my whatever it is, but then somebody says, hey, how do I set up my bank if I'm in this place? And that's a public question on the discussion board, then that's something that somebody else can look to and say, oh, I've got the same, maybe 2 or 3 semesters later, oh, I've got the same bank, or I'm in the same place, I'm having the same problem, and then it's a public. So I just see so much upside to the discussion boards rather than having sort of individual discussions in Slack. Again, we have to scale the program, and individual conversations are a difficult. Like I don't scale very well. There's only one of them.
Yeah, yeah. We gotta be open first, and then just. Yeah. I guess GitLab has. They have some tracking of metrics like the number of DMs. When the number of DMs is getting down, and the number of whatever reactions on public channels are going up, it means they are doing good. They have a lot of documentation that's really nice about tracking like those type of communications and all that. So yeah, I agree with you. Like being in the open first, and then just handling whatever is really private in private is a great approach.
And to that point, if you're able to spend time, if you see an unanswered question or an unanswered comment in the discussion boards, please feel free. We would welcome all 4 of us to. The more the merrier, as I say. So, and it looks like we lost Jay. Which I think is probably okay, because I was going to say, I think with a couple minutes left here, I think probably we don't want to start into another topic. So unless somebody does have a topic they really want to get in real quick, I want to say thank you all for your time today and your effort over the last couple of weeks, and we will talk soon.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Have a good week.
Bye.
See ya.
Cheers. Bye.
Thanks. Yeah.